Welcome to the Whole Enchilada, a community of high achievers that fight the status quo, rebel against mediocrity, and make life happen. Let's go. Hey, Enchilada Nation, so excited about the conversation we're going to have today with not only an incredible entrepreneur and business owner, but one of my closest friends who I just love to spend time with, Tyler Blair. Tyler, thanks for being on the show with me today, buddy.
Thank you, man. You're incredible. You change lives, and that's why I admire you. So.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell a little bit of your bio here in a second, but I got to lead out with this. I got two favorite stories with you, and just so our listeners know, is I've got a lot of Tyler stories. We could go on forever, but I want to share two quick stories about you that I love that will give our listeners a little brief glimpse of who they're going to listen to today. Number one is Tyler worked for me several years ago and was just an incredible part of my team in Phoenix, Arizona. And I remember I had this ritual at the time that once someone proved that they were going to make it on my team, is I would then take time to sit down and do what I called the future self interview, where it was like, okay, you're proven that you're good on the team. I want to keep you around. Let's pave the path of what you want to accomplish. And the way that interview goes for most people is me pushing them to think bigger. And I remember sitting there with Tyler and I say, I can't remember exactly how I asked the question, but it was something along the lines of like, so at some point, like what's a lot of money to you? How much money do you want to make? And without hesitation, no hesitation at all, looking me in the eye, you say $1 billion. And I was like, $1 million? And you're like, no, $1 billion. I want to make $1 billion. And I was like, this guy's freaking going somewhere. Like at that moment, I was like, I got to up my leadership game. It was freaking awesome. Second Tyler story I gotta share. Sorry that I'm just leading out with this because
I love it.
As part of our team, we had Green Group Gives, which is the charity arm of our organization. And I want to see if you remember this, but one of the service activities we did is we went to serve breakfast at a family homeless shelter. And we got the team all rallied up. We showed up with a bunch of stuff to give away. And we get there and somehow they messed up and they didn't have anything there for us to cook.
Nothing.
So nothing. They like didn't have anything ready. We had all these families getting up in a couple hours for breakfast. And I was so impressed with you in that moment because my mind went to like, guys, like, what are we going to do about this? And you just started opening fridges, opening cupboards, and you're like, okay, we got this, we got this, we got this. We're making burritos. Here we go. And you just like took charge and created incredible breakfast for these families and made them all feel loved and special. And it was just like one of those moments I was like, hey, I know that I'm supposed to be the leader today, but you showed up as the leader in that moment, which is a pretty dang awesome experience. Do you remember that?
I totally forgot about it until you brought it up, but who doesn't love a good breakfast burrito?
Right?
Like, I equate everything to food and everything that I do. So for me, it's like, oh, we can throw together a breakfast burrito. You got some eggs, we're good. Like,
here we
throw
go.
it together. So that's so funny.
I say no to a lot of things in my world, but I will never say no to a good breakfast burrito.
Ever.
All right, so that laid the foundation for our conversation. Give our listeners a quick bio of your current team, your current businesses.
Sure.
Go, you're up.
Okay, so Tyler Blair, owner of the Legacy Real Estate team here in, actually we're in Chandler, Arizona. We have a team in San Diego, a couple agents in Tucson, Sierra Vista, and Sholo, Arizona. All of that stuff kind of came organically. We weren't looking to expand or anything like that. It just, the right people came at the right times that wanted to move. So that's what we did. We have a total of 36 agents in total in our whole organization. This year we will close about 420 deals for about 180 million. And we are 5 years in come January. That's when I first got into buying and selling real estate, was 5 years ago in January. So it's been a wild ride. Now we have a flip division called We Buy Ugly Houses. We own a construction company called Blue Agave Construction. And then also we own a couple hearing aid shops that we help manage as well. So a little bit of a different realm there, but once you understand the back end of business and how to manage people and help keep them happy, you really can go start any business once you have that foundation. So it took a while for me to understand that, and following Marcus's leadership there as well. You know, he kind of dabbles in a bunch of different things too. So I always looked at Marcus and thought, I think I could do that stuff. You know, definitely not on the level Marcus does, but you know, it was always nice looking at Marcus as a role model ahead of where I want to be in the next 5 years. So that's where we're at now. We're on a huge recruiting kick right now because I know that we can't create more opportunity for our team unless we bring on more people. So that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I love that. You brought up a couple really key points of what I want to focus our conversation on today. Number one, I want to go back to what you were saying about the idea of a business model, right? People ask me all the time of like, how do you manage all these things? How do you do these different businesses? And really, once you get the model, it's not like you have to start from scratch on every single business. It's just applying a model to some energy, right?
Exactly.
So kind of walk me through what was it that kind of triggered that for you, where it was just like, it kind of came together. You're like, okay, so many entrepreneurs seem like they're pushing that rock up the hill every single day, instead of just saying like, hey, there's a system to this. There's a model to this entrepreneur game.
Yeah. For me, at the beginning, it was focusing on solely selling real estate. I couldn't teach someone else to do it unless I did it. And I had to excel at it to be able to teach other people. And they needed to hear me on the phone. They need to watch me sell a house. They needed to watch me in front of a client. So for me, it was getting the right people on board to teach and then help them become leaders. And that's what we've done. So now it's just a matter of hiring the right people, you know, not just hiring a bunch and seeing hopefully they all work. And because that never works, and it spends you spend a lot of time and energy, where we really kind of pick through to make sure we find the gems. But I think in order to have me start another business, it was making sure I had the right people in place, because my sole focus has always been you know, the legacy real estate team, because every time someone joins our team, we take it very personal to make sure that they succeed.
I love that. That was a big aha for me. I tell people all the time that when I first got into business, I purely had the wrong motivations. I had dollar signs for eyeballs and thought business was all about money. And one of the things that really accelerated my career was that moment of clarity where I said, business is not about money, it's about people.
Yes.
And clearly the way you're describing your team is when they join their team, they become part of the legacy family. Was there a defining moment for you where you kind of got clarity on it is about the people?
Yeah, it was probably the second year that we started the team, because the first year my sole focus was providing for my family and helping those others that joined our team provide for their families as well. Um, Once I saw their success, it was like, wow, like that is way more rewarding than putting a check in my bank.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge for me, watching someone go from, you know, a Domino's pizza driver to becoming the number one agent. Like, it's just so incredible to watch people's journeys and watch their whole life completely change right before your eyes, when they don't even recognize it. You have to remind them because they're so deep in the grind. So that's when it changed for me, was watching other people's success that I had a hand in.
Yeah, I agree with you. That is the biggest payday when you figure out leverage in a way that you're not sucking from people, but you're actually infusing into people and creating
Exactly.
that next level of opportunity. And it creates that level of loyalty where they're thankful for you creating the opportunity, but then they're having fun doing
Yeah.
it, right? Which is unfortunately for a lot of people, a lot of people can't think of an experience work wise that they equate to joy, right? I was having fun. They separate, oh, this is work, or I do other things that have fun. And with great leadership, great culture, you can have fun succeeding in business, right?
And I feel like that's so important, to make sure that, you know, the people that you bring on first, that they're happy. You want them to enjoy their job and enjoy the people that they work with. But secondly, most important, that there's no ceiling. If you create a ceiling for people, they're going to leave, and then all of that work that you did and the relationship that you built, I don't want to say it's all for nothing, because it's not, because you had an impact for them. Even though they left, you still had an impact, which is very important. But, the goal is to have everybody with you forever. And the only way to do that is to create a work environment that absolutely everybody loves, and then endless opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, John Maxwell, one of the greatest leadership coaches of all time, talks about the law of the lid, right? Is you are the lid to your organization, and you're right. The goal is that everyone that joins you, if you're going to invest a lot of money into building them up and growing them, that they want to stay loyal and within the organization for a long time.
Yep.
And yeah, the goal is for everybody. And I would say that it's unrealistic to have the expectation that everyone will stay. There's some people that I wanted success more for them than they did, and I kept
Oh
them
yeah.
longer than they needed to. There was
Yep.
the people that were too uncomfortable with the accountability of success, and it became too uncomfortable for them. And then there's the rare few gems. Then you're a perfect example of this. Is even though you and I worked incredibly well together and you
Very
crushed it
well.
on my team, the truth of the matter is I wasn't growing fast enough for you to create a world inside my world for you to hit your dreams. And so that's one of the things I had to come to a realization is sometimes my leadership didn't grow fast enough for you to grow the world you want to grow inside me. And I think there's some people that get angry and spiteful at the
Yeah.
person that goes and does that. And I just love, and I was telling you this before we started recording, I love that I get to be a part of your journey. Even
You're
though
too nice.
we're not on the same team anymore. We're
Yeah.
peer-to-peer partners, right?
Yeah.
Which is, to me, is part of leadership, is accepting the fact of, hey, there's some leaders that I'm going to grow that are going to stay loyal to me forever. And there's some leaders I'm going to grow that I've got to support them to go do their own thing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I would say I got from you right off the bat is when I did, make that jump, it was hard. I mean, that was a hard, and you let me know, hey, it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. And you were helpful there. And then through the entire journey, you were always there. It's not like there wasn't a point where I couldn't call you and you wouldn't help with a question or any of that. And I think that's what I try to do, because I mean, we've had people leave, and that's okay. I want the best for them, and I truly do. And when people come on, I truly mean that, because what kind of leader would I be, or what kind of leader would you be if you didn't mean it, or if it was just words, right? Just words. There's those teams are out there, man, and those brokerages are out there that they don't mean what they say. And it's up to me and you and people like us to change that perception of the way real estate is ran, and the way teams are ran, or brokerages are ran, or businesses are ran, and leaders are within them. So it's a harsh reality, because not everyone is like you know what I mean? And that's important to see out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If we look back, I think a lot of people look at your level of success right now, and they just think, oh man, he's got the Midas touch, or he's so lucky, or he's always been succeeding at this level. Because from the outside looking in, it looks like this rosy path to success, and there's clearly not this. You started your team 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. I imagine there wasn't this clear line of, we started here as a rocket ship directly to where we are now. Walk me through a couple of like your biggest obstacles or roadblocks along the way, and how you
Sure.
approach those.
Sure. So, first of all, I want to say, anybody can do it. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so it's just a matter of hard work and busting your butt. Sorry, the light shut off. Uh, Busting your butt day in and day out. Every time you walk in the door, you know that your family's depending on you. You're spending time away from your family, not to jack around, to get to work. And that's what I did. I didn't see my kids and family really for a year and a half. My kids were in bed when I got home, and they weren't up when I left. And that was a harsh reality that I didn't even think about when I made that jump. I'm sure glad I did, just because of the lives that we impact now. But that was the hardest thing at first, was that balance between your family and work. When I first got in, people said, "Hey, are you going to be married to real estate, or are you going to be married to your wife?" And I don't remember who it was, but I looked at them and I said, "I'm going to be married to both." Um, and I feel like I've done a fairly decent job. At the beginning it wasn't, but I had to grind. And I guess that was the first obstacle, was getting my wife on board, making sure that she understood that every hour that I spent away was for them, and building a future and a legacy for my family for generations. And painting that picture correctly so she could see and be on board with it. And at first she wasn't. Those first couple months she said, "Hey, maybe you should go get a job." And I would be lying if I said I didn't think about it. And then now I mess with her. I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to get that job. What do you think?" It's just completely different now.
And
But
she's like, heck no.
yeah, she's like, "Stop it." She's laughs, and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, she's too nice for her own good. But
Yeah.
anyway, that was the first obstacle, was making sure my family was on board for that grind, because it's a grind. Next, I would say it was when we had about 4 agents. Making sure that I had time to train them, teach them, but also close deals to pay the bills. My deals paid the bills for 2 years, maybe a little longer. And that was a harsh reality that I had no idea about. You know, Typical agents don't close deals for their first 6 months. On our team now, it's usually the second month, so it's a little different now. But back then, we didn't have the training and the resources and all of that we have now. That was my second obstacle, was making sure that they were successful as well as me, because I had to pay all the bills, if that makes sense. And then after that, I would say it was me stepping out of production. Um, that was the hardest thing for me. I love meeting people. I love handing keys to a new buyer who thought they couldn't buy a house, or calling a seller because I made them 10K over, or that thrill for me was huge. But every time I did that, I knew that I was taking time away from a new agent that joined our team that was counting on me to help them become successful. So taking that step back financially was very, very difficult. That was probably the hardest, because I had never made that much money in my entire life. When you start getting $30,000-$40,000 a month, you're like, holy crap. When you're used to making $3,000 a month, like it's different. So for me, it was hard to make that change. Sure glad I did, now that I'm impacting so many people. At least I hope I am. And now it's completely different. So I would say those were the hardest hurdles. The last one was a mental jam. It was all mental for me, being okay taking a step back, not taking a salary for 6 months, a year, because I'd already closed deals and saved money. Another thing I want to say, I didn't buy a thing for 3 years, not a thing. I had the house I lived in, and that was it. I drove the same car. Callie drove the same car. Like, our vacations looked completely different then than they do now. Like, it's just that step back was something I didn't know. And that was probably the hardest, because it was a financial step back that I wasn't thinking of, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. I love the path you just created with these roadblocks, and I think a lot of our listeners can really resonate with this path to success. I mean, as you were giving these 3 examples, I'm like, yep, I've been there. Yep, I had that one. Yeah, I was there. And you just described that third one particularly as a mental jam. And I would almost say that every one of these was some element of a mental jam, because that's where most people start feeling an element of friction in either their business or their personal life. And it's really our brains trying to tell us like, go somewhere safe, go back to safety. You're uncomfortable right now. This is stress. There's uncertainty. And our brains are constantly like, back up, go find shelter. And somehow there's those that figure out how to get through that mental jam and have that internal argument of like, no, I'm not listening to go back to safety. I deserve better than that and get through it. If it's all right, I want to slow down on all three of these for a second and talk through them, because I think you articulated it brilliantly. For any entrepreneur is going to go through these three if they have a bigger vision to grow a bigger team. Number one is getting those around you on board with that grind. That is a challenge, and it's not a one conversation and done, right? When you're got your nose to the grindstone and you're pushing through all day, and in your mind you see a better version of your company, nobody else can see it as clearly as you, no matter how close they are to you. And it's almost like that analogy of the crabs in the buckets pulling people back in. It's not that they don't love you, that they want to pull you back. It's almost like they're pulling you back out of love because they see how hard you are working.
Yes.
So it's almost this misnomer of like, well, the people I love are trying to pull me back, but something inside of me is pushing me forward. And it's not just the haters telling you not to make it. In a lot of ways, sometimes it's the people you love and trust most that are standing in your way, not on purpose, but it happens.
And I want to say, like, I had to learn on what to say and what not to say. Especially at the beginning when I would go home and complain a bunch. Well, what did my wife hear? All the complaints. She never heard about that amazing showing that I had or the offer that I wrote, because I was focusing on the negative. So when she was telling me, hey, maybe you should go get a salary job, is because she thought I wasn't happy. It was all out of love, and I had to be careful on who I told my success to as well, because certain people would act a different way or expect me to pay for dinner or things like that you don't even think about when you're in the grind. You never think about all that stuff. So just a little tip is I would say, just be careful what you share with certain people. Find your safe people and share the world. Like you were a safe person. Adam Lee was a safe person. Hani was a safe person. I could say anything to it, didn't matter. We found solutions and moved forward to where I could share the success and the heartache. And it's important to share both. But I learned real quick with my wife, I started just sharing the success. Hey, I had this awesome thing happen today. And she was like, great, or, oh, that's so cool. I'm going to post on your Facebook. Because I hated Facebook. I'm like, I don't want to post. I don't want to do any of that. I'm like, if you want to do it, go right ahead. You post whatever you want. I'm not posting anything. And I didn't know how important that was back then for her to do that. But
I think those are some great points. I think it's really important to know who your allies are, right? And we've got those people that a lot of times people think you're complaining, but sometimes we just need a vent. I mean, this is where my wife shows up in a huge way as a business partner for me, even though she just has not a lot of business savvy in her, just because that's not her world. She's an incredible elementary school teacher. That was her field. And there's no way I could do that. But one of the things that she's been a huge support to me for is we love to go on walks at night. And she knows, she calls me the lion because I'm pacing, and she can tell I'm thinking. And so she's like, let's go for a walk. And a lot of times it's me venting, but I'm working it out loud in a safe space.
You're just talking.
I'm just talking. And a lot of, if you count the number of words that are being said, a lot of it's just me talking out loud, almost to myself, and knowing she's by my side going, yep. Okay. Tell me more about that. Yeah. Even though sometimes she doesn't understand what I'm talking about, the financials and things like that. She may not understand but she's giving me permission to vent it out, to work through the solution. And I'm just so grateful to have that platform to do it. And you mentioned Hani. Hani's still one of my quick calls of like, hey, I need to run by something. You're one of those people I'll call and say, hey, I want to think through this with you. So you need those, but I think that's an important piece. So to move into the second mental jam, or start to wrap up this one about being willing to go through that grind, is a lot of us set these big goals, and that we know when the moment we're writing the goal, we know there's a grind ahead of us. And in the moment we put pen to paper, and a lot of our entrepreneurs are going to be doing this for the new year, right? We're putting
Yeah.
together our goals for 2022.
Yep.
When you have pen to paper writing the goal, it seems like you've got all the willpower in the world to go push through that grind. It's in the moment of the grind is when the demons show up and try to talk you out of it. So you have to be mentally prepared beforehand to know those demons are going to show up, and have your tools ready to fight those demons in that moment, because that is where most entrepreneurs fail, is not in the dream, it's in the do.
And be realistic about it. Like if you think you're going to have 5 out of 5 amazing lead gen days, not going to happen.
Yep.
I always tell people 3 out of 5. If you can get 3 out of 5, you had a great week, you're doing more lead gen than 99% of agents out there, you will be successful.
Yep.
And if you think, I mean, Jerem Rogers, who's on our team, helps me run a bunch of stuff. He's a 5 out of 5 guy. They are very hard to find. There's a couple others like Jason Bond. And I mean, Jason Bond joined us last September. So he finished his first full year this year. He'll close 42 deals for $20 million. He's going to make a good amount of money, a lot of money. But he's a 5 out of 5 guy. Awesome. But not everyone is 5 out of 5. I'm not a 5 out of 5 guy. I'm a 3 out of 5, 3 out of 5 guy. So that's what
I think that's great advice, right? I think people look from and I get this all the time too. People look from the outside in and think they would put money on that Tyler's a 5 out of 5 guy. Just look at him. Look what he's done. He's got to be a 5 out of 5 guy. And the truth is, you made the comment earlier that you're not the sharpest tool in the shed. I'd make the argument that if someone opened the shed, you and I would be those rusty, weird-looking tools in the back of the tool shed. But
just waving in the background.
But we're consistent, right?
Yes, that's
all
it is.
It's consistency. Yeah, I would take consistency over an egotistical talent all day long.
100%.
The second kind of roadblock you brought up was that transition of leadership, right? This is where I see a lot of people fail over and over and over again in entrepreneurship. Is they create some energy and success on their own, and then they get this mentality of like, well, I don't want to do it all, so I'm just going to hire people to do it. And they almost treat it like the idea of just saying like, well, if I'm paying them money, they should be able to do it the same way I do. They don't realize that that's not just a trade for money, paying someone to do something in an equal trade. What you have to pick up is leadership skills. Yes. And generally speaking, leadership skills, that skill set is earned. You have to work hard to obtain leadership skills. And a lot of times entrepreneurs think, well, if I'm a good salesperson, I'm automatically a great leader. Completely different skill set.
Totally different.
So I wanted to flesh that out a little bit. If you started bringing people on, how did you start acquiring that leadership skill set?
Books, podcasts, and I would go to events. I went to a lot of Ben Kinney's events. Mm-hmm. And I brought some of our team leads. I'm sorry, now they're team leads, but no, I brought some of the original guys that were with me from the start. Yep. And then they help them see the vision, and it helped them learn. It helped them become a leader as well. Because I think the number one key to success is if you can create leaders yourself. And that's what's important. And to have a big organization, you have to be able to do that. I think the biggest misconception is people get out of production too fast. I mean, I was showing and going on listing appointments when we had 12 agents. Like I was still on the phone doing lead gen. Like they need to hear you as the leader on the phone so they know what to say. Yep. And it's important. I think people do it too fast because, I'm done showing homes. Like, then maybe you shouldn't be in real estate. Like, yep. I will always sell homes. I'll always take listings. I don't take buyers anymore, but I'll always take listings, especially for my past clients that they were, some of my favorite friends and family now. Like, I will always help them. But that transition is very, very difficult.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's really two critical pieces to leadership, particularly that first level of leadership when you're still doing with the team. It's we are doing it together. is number one, leading by example. You
Yep.
should never expect someone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. I mean, even back in the day when you were on my team, one of the things I was very aware of is I would always leave my door open.
Uh-huh.
And you guys heard me on the phone. You
Yep.
heard me doing the same activities that
You would
I
call
asked
us
you guys to
in.
do.
You would call us in and be like, "Hey, I want you to listen to this call I'm about to have."
Yep. Yep.
And I would be like, I would take notes and I would pick up a ton about how to say things and when to say things. Like it's that level of training is you can't pay for it. You can't pay for something like that other than being with somebody like yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Is that lead by example is like, let's do this together.
Yep.
And then the other critical piece of leadership that I think a lot of people miss is if you're going to hire someone and you have expectations of them, they've earned a right for time on your calendar.
Yep.
So there needs to be a regular meeting with that person to reconnect with their goals. Why are they doing this? What are their successes? Where do they need help? Where can you support them better? And so leadership isn't 100% of getting things off your plate. It's also adding things onto your plate. It should be
Yes.
disproportionate that you're getting more off your plate than you're adding. But when you're giving away tasks in leadership, you are responsible for growing as a leader and eating up some of your calendar to give to leadership.
Yeah, sorry, you might not be able to watch shows. You might not be able to stay home and watch Netflix. Like you need to be making sure your people are successful. They're counting on you. So, and I think the problem is a lot of people think that they're going to have more flexibility and they're going to make more money and all this stuff, and it's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I love seeing leaders like you in the entrepreneurship world, because here you are, you've got this big organization. And I think a lot of leaders look at that and say, well, look at all these people providing money to Tyler to make sure he has a great Christmas for his family. And it's a great leader looks at exactly the opposite of like, I sit here and think as we're approaching the holidays is like, okay, well, I've got 475 families that I'm responsible for them having a great Christmas this year. Like they're counting on me. That's what keeps me up at night. Right.
Exactly.
And I think that leads right into the third comment you made earlier of that transition of getting out of production. And I would almost equate that to in the second benchmark we talked about there, that was you becoming a great leader. And then for you to go out of production, that's when you become a leader of leaders.
Yeah.
Right? That really is that next level of growth is when you're too big for you to be the on-site leader full-time to everybody. And it takes a completely another layer of skill set for you then to learn, okay, now I'm a grower and leader of leaders, which is completely different than being a great leader to a handful of people.
And it's a struggle, it's a battle, but the reward is just incredible when you see other people grow and when they get their first check. And it's just the money becomes obsolete. The money doesn't matter, and what people don't understand is when they first start a team, they're like, oh, I'm gonna make more money. Like if you're a high producer, you can make more money just buying and selling homes with a showing assistant and a normal assistant. Like if you're doing it for the money, just go be an agent.
Yeah.
But if you want to change people's lives and have a hand in that, the only way you can do that is stepping out and taking a back seat.
Yeah. Yeah. And patience. Because the money does show up, but it's a patience game of saying, because I'm not going to lie, there were times where I was making transition from leading a small team to be growing and leading leaders.
Yeah.
I'd be like, man, alive, I would have made way more money this year if I just had been like on the ground,
just grinding
and grinding it out. But then that wouldn't be in alignment with my core value, which is growing people, right?
Exactly.
Really helping people grow to a new level. And then after a long road of patience, it shows up. And those, like, as you mentioned earlier, that paycheck of seeing somebody grow their leadership is just huge.
It's massive. Feels amazing.
Yeah. So one last thing I want to chat about before we wrap up. One of the things you and I were talking a little bit about before we started recording was the importance of learning communication and problem solving. My listeners have heard me talk about this before, that my wife is teaching my kids so many incredible things of how to be great humans, caring, loving. people. And if I think about it, I'm going to let her teach all those things because she's way better at those than I am. But if there's one thing I would want to teach my kids, it's how to communicate and problem solve. Because I think realistically, that is what business and life is all about, is can you communicate and problem solve? And I loved how you were talking about the importance of learning to communicate earlier. Where did that passion around communication come from for you?
I think it just came from understanding how important it is. Um, really, and it came from you, really. When I would listen to you talk to a client or us or your wife or your kids, I've seen you in all facets of life, and putting on the dad hat, putting on the husband hat, putting on the business owner hat, putting on the, client hat. I mean, literally everything, and being able to be a chameleon with that while still communicating correctly is just second to none when it comes to business and your personal relationships. My wife and I communicate so well together that we've never been happier, and I equate that all to communication. And I don't want to say I trained her how to communicate, because it definitely wasn't the case. But we would sit down after I went over the DISC analysis with you, and I did that with her, and we would go in and we'd understand how she likes to be communicated with and how I like to be communicated with. And then I would take that onto my phone calls when I talk to clients, and learn how to say things at the right time. And that's what it comes down to, is saying the right things at the right time for them, not you.
Yeah.
When it comes to business.
That was a big aha in my career. Cause I remember walking out of like a listing appointment or something like that early on in my career thinking, man, I freaking crushed that appointment.
Yeah.
They'd be idiots not to work with me. And I call them the next morning and be like, hey, we ready to sign paperwork? Like, actually we signed with somebody else. And I was like, what the heck happened in there? And it's because I showed up and presented and consulted the way I would want to be consulted to, right?
To them.
Yeah, and this will come as a surprise to you. I've been told a few times in my career that I'm a little over the top and intimidating and too much energy for some people.
Never heard that. I would never say that.
Right. So that was kind of that early on in that journey of me thinking like, wait a second, there's people wired differently than me. I need to show up differently for people.
Yep.
And get the same result, but through the way people need to be communicated to, the way they view the problem. And you do that so beautifully. I've always just been impressed with how you communicate for other people.
Thank you. I really appreciate you and all the amazing comments you give me. It makes me feel so good.
Good. You deserve it.
Thank you.
Let's wrap up our conversation.
Yeah.
For our entrepreneurs out there that find themselves in the grind, that are looking at the year to come with aspirations to get to that next level, they're going to be listening to your story, and they'll be equally impressed with what you've done as I have. And I'll quickly plug this for our listeners: of what you've accomplished is only a fraction of what I know you'll do in your lifetime. I'm just so excited to see where you're going to go. What advice would you give to our listeners in the whole enchilada for how to approach 2022?
I'm going to tell you the same thing I've been telling our team. I don't see the real estate market changing. So you have to double down on lead gen. Put in the time, put in the work. And the question is, what do you want your 2022 Christmas to look like for your family? If it looks the exact same as this year, then you just wasted an entire year. So focus on lead gen, focus on 3 out of 5 days being consistent with lead gen, and you'll watch your life change right before your eyes. And don't get caught in the shiny objects. They're everywhere. Focus on the one thing. I mean, all of you know Gary Keller. Focus on the one thing and just own that one thing, because other things will come later and they'll come at the right time. So focus this next year. If you're in the grind, get deeper into the grind, because you're going to need to for 2022.
Love that. I could not have given better advice myself. That idea of just like there are more shiny objects and distractions in our world on both a business and a personal level than there have ever been.
Yep.
Let's get refocused on what's the most important. As we know, in most of our businesses, the most important thing is our businesses are worth nothing if we have nothing to if we don't have anyone to serve. So it is that lead generation, lead follow-up, relationship nurturing is number one. And that it's going to take more effort per relationship in 2022, just for the pure fact of all those additional transactions and more competition than ever. I love that. Great advice. So Tyler, thank you. I look up to you a ton. You're a hero of mine. Just appreciate the relationship, and thanks for being on the show today.
You got it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, Enchilada Nation, don't forget, take good notes, go apply what you learned today, and don't forget, go live life on your terms.